Okay, the July 10th, 2018 meeting of the Monroe County Legislature will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Elkoffer? Here. Mr. Ansello? Here. Mr. Baroth? Here. Ms. Boyce is excused. Mr. Brew? Here. President Carbone?
Here.
Mrs. Conley? Here. Mr. Delahanty? Here. Mrs. DeFlorio? Here. Mrs. Draw? Here. Mr. Felder? Here. Mr. Flagler Mitchell is excused. Ms. Harris is excused. Mr. Hebert? Here. Mr. Howland? Here. Ms. Cayley? Here. Mr. Lightfoot? Here. Mr. Mafucci? Here. Mr. Marinetti? Here. Mr. Michike? Here. Mr. Morelli? Here. Mr. Moyo? Here. Mr. Rocco? Here. Mr. Shepard? Here. Ms. Taylor? Here. Mr. Terp is excused. Mr. Wilcox? Here. Mr. Wilt? Here. Mr. Zale. Here.
Please stay seated at this time. We'll have a moment of silent prayer. Please stand as Legislator Mike Rockow will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I ask that you remain standing. Without objection, we will take agenda item number 37 out of the regular agenda order. Agenda item number 37 is moved by Legislator Marinetti and seconded by Legislator Cayley. Will the clerk please read the resolution in memoriam for Derek Allen Felder, brother of Legislator Vincent R. Felder.
Expressing regret of the Monroe County Legislature on the recent passing of Derek Allen Felder, brother of Monroe County Legislator Vincent R. Felder. Be it resolved that the Monroe County Legislature hereby expresses its deepest sympathy at the recent passing of Derek Allen Felder, brother of Monroe County Legislator Vincent R. Felder. And whereas Derek passed away on June 15, 2018 at the age of 54. And whereas Derek was born on December 5, 1963 in Jamaica, New York, to Harvey Lee and Rosalie Wyatt Felder. When Derek was young, he and his family relocated to Roosevelt, New York, where he attended school until 1978. In 1978, his family moved to Hempstead, New York, where Derek graduated from Hempstead High School in 1982. And whereas, after high school graduation, Derek enlisted in the United States Navy. While he was stationed in San Diego, California, he met and married Elizabeth Richards and had one daughter, Brandy. Derek moved back to New York for several years and finally relocated to Tucson, Arizona, where he lived the remainder of his life. And whereas Derek is survived by his parents, Harvey and Rosalie Felder, one sister, Darius Wyatt Wilson, 4 brothers, Harvey Felder Jr., Kevin Felder, Vincent R. Felder, and Emmanuel Felder, 1 son, Derek Holmes, 3 daughters, Brandy Felder, Darlene Holmes, and Nicole Holmes, 8 grandchildren, and many aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, and friends. He will be missed by all who knew and loved him. And whereas Derek will be remembered for his kindness, charm, and warm personality, he was caring and well-liked by all who he encountered. He will be missed by all who knew and loved him. Be it further resolved that the clerk of the legislature is hereby requested to forward a copy of this resolution to the bereaved family. This resolution was adopted unanimously with each legislator rising in his or her place for a moment of silence.
Seated. Your copy of the Journal of Day 7, June 12, 2018 is available on your tablet. Without exception, the journal will stand approved as submitted. There's a hearing loop in place tonight to assist those who are hearing impaired. Anyone requiring assistance should inquire in the clerk's office.
If you have a cellular phone, pager, or other electronic devices in your possession, I would request that you make it inaudible for the duration of the meeting. Thank you for your cooperation.
Legislators, the referrals submitted to the legislature for the next committee cycle are available on your tablet as well as online. This evening, there are several proclamations scheduled. Madam Clerk.
Would Charlie Schiano please come forward? Also, President Dr. Joe Carbone and Legislator Tony Michike. Whereas after the 1966 FIFA World Cup final between England and West Germany, Charlie Schiano became interested in the growing sport. Soccer is a sport that requires its athletes to have dedication as well as perseverance. It was evident to him that professional soccer was going to be the sport of the future in the United States. Schiano became a majority owner of Rochester's first professional soccer team in 1967. And whereas Charlie Schiano became the president of the American Soccer League, soon after the Lancers joined in 1967. He used his title to share with the world the inside of professional soccer with a Lancers radio broadcast. The Lancers were the first team in the U.S. to provide media coverage like this. In his years with the Lancers, he served as general manager, secretary, treasurer, radio and television announcer, and even coach of the team. It is with all of these accomplishments and more that he deserves the honor of being inducted into the U.S. Soccer National Hall of Fame. And whereas being inducted into the U.S. Soccer National Hall of Fame is a fantastic accomplishment. It is the culmination of a career's hard work, dedication, and outstanding leadership skills. Charlie Schiano, the father of professional soccer in Rochester, was a former coach of the Rochester Lancers and embodied all of these qualities over the course of his career. And that is exactly why he is a candidate for induction to the U.S. Soccer National Hall of Fame. And now, therefore, we, Dr. Joe Carbone, President, Carla F. Boyce, Legislator District 5, and Tony Michike, Legislator District 26, on behalf of the entire Monroe County Legislature, do hereby recognize and congratulate Charlie Schiano on his great accomplishments and contributions to the sport of soccer.
I'd like to thank Carla Boyce and President Joe and Tony and everybody else, and I'll keep this short. They told me to keep it short. For me to keep it short is difficult, but I will. I just want to share with you that this honor that I'm receiving really belongs to quite a few people, including Pat D'Onofrio, who passed away, who happened to be the father-in-law of our county executive, and he was very helpful and my partner in all our ventures. But let me just take a few minutes and just want to hit some highlights of the years of we were in soccer. It started in '67. We joined the American Soccer League. And then and at that time, there were about 10 soccer fields, maybe 20 soccer fields in Monroe County. We were asked by Lamar Hunt to join the North American Soccer League, the major league, in 1970. We joined the major league, North American Soccer League, in '70. We won the championship in 1970. In 1971, we won the International Cup, where we played 4 teams from Europe and beat them all. In 1972, because we won the championship in 1970, we were asked to play in the Champions Cup in Guatemala, the first professional American soccer team to play in the CONCACAF Champion of Champions. We played against 8 champions, including Cruz Azul of Mexico. In 1977, I'm jumping ahead, we played the Cosmos here in Rochester in front of 22,000 people. We were on worldwide television. The game was broadcast around the world here from Rochester. We lost that game. The second game we played in the Meadowlands in front of 73,000 people, and former broadcaster Rich Funky, now Senator Funky, he did the play-by-play. I only mention this because the Lancers really created an atmosphere in the United States. We kind of saved soccer in 1970. The interim coach of the national team is a kid from Brighton, David Sarakin, who is one of our people. Now we have over 100 soccer fields here in Monroe County. And just want to mention that in 2026, we're going to have the World Cup here. The national team of France, which won its game today, it's in the finals, they have 6 players that come from the most poverty-stricken area of Paris. That's because they developed in France a program where you don't have to pay to play. and these young men develop skills, which we have to do in Monroe County. If any of you want to talk to me about that later on another time, I just want to thank all of you. And I want to thank my wife and my daughter, Kate, who's here with the triplets. It's a great honor, and I thank all the legislators, the county executive, Carla Boyce, and my good friend, the president, my podiatrist, Joe. And thank you all very much for this great honor. I'm really deeply touched and appreciate it.
Would Maria Thomas Fisher please come forward? Also President Dr. Joe Carbone and Legislator Joseph Morale Jr. Whereas it is the sense of this legislature to honor individuals whose efforts add to the quality of life and the betterment of others across Monroe County. And whereas, attendance to such concern and in full accord with long-standing tradition, these legislators are justly proud to honor Maria Thomas Fisher for her service to others. And whereas, an Irondequoit native, Maria Thomas Fisher went on to study at SUNY Brockport, receiving her master's degree in public administration. And whereas, since graduation, Maria has been serving others in various capacities. She helped found Next Gen Rochester, a young professional giving circle of the Rochester Area Community Foundation, served as president of the Rochester Young Professionals and Rock City Coalition to grow the young professional movement, and helped start the city's Rec on the Move program to bring recreational activities to underserved neighborhoods. Currently, she serves as a board member for the Rochester Children's Scholarship Fund to support low-income, high-achieving city school district youth, and volunteers with the Rochester Pioneers, a blind baseball team that competes in beep ball. And whereas Maria's hard work, boundless energy, and selfless attitude have not gone unnoticed, she has collected many well-deserved honors and awards over the years and has been named a community champion by the United Way in Rochester Business Journal, a Woman Who Inspires by Rochester Woman Magazine, and On the Ladder Up and Coming Leader by the Democrat and Chronicle, and a 2009 member of the 40 Under 40 list by the Rochester Business Journal. And whereas Maria's willingness to help others recently led her to agree to donate a kidney to the husband of a Facebook friend named Angela. While they had a number of mutual friends, they hadn't interacted directly until Angela posted that her husband's kidneys were failing. Maria saw the post and reached out with an offer to get tested to see if they were a match, which they were, and are now in the transplant preparation process. Now, therefore, let it be known that we, Dr. Joe Carbone, President, and Joseph Morale Jr., Legislator, District 17, do hereby honor Maria Thomas Fisher for her contributions to our community and spirit of generosity on this 10th day of July, 2018.
Thank you very much. I know my union people are back there like, oh no, she's got a mic. Thank you, Legislator Morale, for this proclamation. Thank you, President Carbone. I've just been humbled by all the kindness you have shown me, but this entire experience has been so humbling to me. I've been overwhelmed by all the people who have reached out to me to let me know that the loved ones they lost help save other people's lives through organ donation. It is profound to have people reach out to share their most painful personal experiences with me, a complete stranger, just to say thank you. I've been humbled by all the compassion my union brothers and sisters have shown me, some of whom are here today. I'm surprised they're so quiet. This is unusual. They've wrapped their arms around me and ensured that I didn't lose one day's pay during this process. When we say we are a union family, that is an unbreakable bond. Going through this, I've been reminded that not everyone is lucky enough to be in a union yet. And so I must fight even harder for workers' rights, including preserving pre-existing conditions, protections, of which organ donation is one. Yes, organ donation is considered a pre-existing condition. But the overwhelming compassion I feel now, I have experienced my entire life. My family survived a Ukrainian genocide only to be forced into a Nazi slave labor camp. My Uncle Walter, who hates being the center of attention, but I'm going to call him out, spent part of his childhood in a Nazi slave labor camp. It was American soldiers who freed my family's camp. Over 400,000 American soldiers were killed during World War II, crossing oceans to save families like mine, families who would never have the opportunity to thank them for their sacrifice. When my family was placed in a DP camp, it was America that embraced my family with open arms and took in a family from a communist nation who spoke no English, had no education, and had no resources. I only exist, and I'm only here today because of the generosity and compassion of the American people. And the weight of that gift was deeply ingrained in my family. My Uncle Walter served his nation as a Vietnam veteran and went on to RIT on the GI Bill. My other uncle served in the Korean War, because this is what we immigrants do. We love our nation deeply, we serve our country faithfully, we build our communities devotedly, and sometimes we even give of our bodies to save a stranger's life. And maybe in donating, I can start to pay back a small part of all that I've been given. Thank you again, Legislator Morelli, and to all the legislators today. Please help me promote organ donation.
We will now recess for the purpose of holding a public hearing. I declare open the public hearing on Resolution Intro Number 171 of 2018, entitled Adoption of 2019 through 2024 Capital Improvement Program.
There are no speakers registered for this hearing.
There being none, I declare this public hearing closed. I will now reconvene the July 10th, 2018 meeting of the Monroe County Legislature. There are no formal committee reports scheduled for this evening. We will now hold the public forum. We have several people registered to address the legislature. Madam Clerk.
If you require assistance, a deputy is available to assist you in approaching the lectern. I will call 3 people forward at one time. Each speaker will have 2 minutes in which to address the legislature, and kindly conclude your remarks when the timer sounds and exit through the back of the chambers. Thank you for your cooperation. Our first 3 speakers will be David Attridge, Joel Shapiro, and Chief Van Bretero.
Thank you, first of all, for letting me speak. And I just wanted, there are a couple of views that I just wanted to place. I was rather disappointed with the county releasing the numbers for the opioid crisis for the deaths of 220 on the day before the biggest summer holiday that there is. It's known well throughout the press relations. It's usually when you drop any bad news because it's not going to get picked up. But this isn't necessarily bad news. These are lives. These are 220 lives that we've lost. And there's 220 families and loved ones that go behind this. I know we've had this plan that's been going on, but I feel that we need to move ahead on it with the plan that was announced in January. We need to move quicker. We need more action. We're not going to Narcan our way out of this. We're not going to. We need more action. We need that medical advisory board that was going to be set up, that was announced on January 25th. 70 lives since then have been gone. We need that type of action. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is I received permission from the New York State Board of Elections to begin a political action group called the Recovery Party. This group will be very active throughout the next elections and the elections to come over that. We are here to support those that are part of the solution with this opioid crisis, that are part of the solution to end this, to get the numbers down. There's going to be over 700 families that will be backing in this party. 700 families that over the last 3 years have lost loved ones, family members. So we ask for those that are running, and of course, we'll be holding many forums throughout the election season. And like I said, we're here to support those that are part of the solution. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joel Shapiro. I have to talk fast. 2 minutes goes fast. Is Mr. Sleazer, the Director of Communications, in the House? I guess not. Okay. Around March, first couple weeks of March, I made a simple question to the Monroe County Health Department. How many people have been, how many deaths have there been in Monroe County? Go make a Freedom of Information request. I see that's the openness of Monroe County. Now, the importance of the FOIL law, and I submitted a FOIL request. The verbiage of the New York State law says that all inclination should be to release information as fast as possible, to the public interest, to the requester. So how can I say? The spirit and intent that is stated in the law, it only has a couple lines, but the thing that's important is the law itself. And the Freedom of Information law for the FOIL request that I submitted says there has to be an approximate date for when my Freedom of Information request will be fulfilled. There's that is the law. But then I get extension after extension after extension saying within the next 20 days, it will be fulfilled. So I just gave Monroe County notice that I want my request filled this 25th of July. It's my right, and I want it done. Here's my one. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Chief Ambretto from the Gates Police. I'm also the president of the Monroe County Chiefs Association. We're here to talk about the opioid epidemic. Clearly, this thing has now become what I would call a Category 5 hurricane. It's my belief, as well as others in the law enforcement community, that what we need at this point is a coordinated effort. We have a lot of good things going on from the county public health department, as well as other agencies. What we're lacking is the coordination and standardization of some policies and procedures. What I'm submitting to you is the Office of Emergency Operations over on Scottsville Road. It's a great organization that handles mass casualty events. They're used to dealing with coordination and communication of resources. That's who I would go to kind of coordinate all this. They're experts in doing that, and that's where we're at. We got a lot of good stuff going on. We just lack that coordination, and I would recommend or suggest to you that it's time to look into having that office that's run by the county kind of take the lead on all this stuff. And I'll just give you an example of some of the frustrations that we're talking about. One of the things that's going on right now is the Narcan training of the restaurants throughout Monroe County. It's a great program, no doubt about it. But the problem is I've pulled more dead bodies out of hotels, and I've had more overdoses occurring in my hotels than I have in my restaurants. And again, I just think it's because we don't have that coordination of effort. And it's clearly time, we got to step up the game a little more. And again, I want to thank you guys for all the efforts that you've done with the medical examiner's office addressing the toxicology problem. Thank you very much for doing that, and I look forward to seeing what we all do next as a team. Thank you very much.
Our last speakers are Robert Kehoe and Yolanda Batista.
Good evening, Mr. Nolfo, Judge Van Strydock, Mr. Napier, President Carbone, honorable members of the legislature. As we are all aware, the New York State Police and all members of law enforcement suffered a tragic loss just over 1 week ago with the senseless murder of Trooper Nicholas Clark. The Monroe County Sheriff's Office Association of Retirees offers our heartfelt condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of Trooper Clark. May he rest in peace. Immediately after news of this horrible event became known, our county executive issued the following public statement. And I quote, "My heart breaks for the family of New York State Trooper Nicholas Clark, killed today in the line of duty just south of our area. Trooper Clark's loss is a tragic reminder of the many dangers law enforcement officers face every time they put on the badge on our behalf. As we spend time with our friends and family this week, may we all take time to recognize and appreciate the sacrifices made by those who serve in uniform to keep us safe, both at home and abroad. I ask that our entire community join me in keeping the Clark family and all New York State troopers in our thoughts and prayers today and in the days to come." Those are certainly meaningful and appropriate words, and I do applaud Ms. Donalfo for her sincerity and for her rapid public acknowledgement of this tragedy. Just as countless members of law enforcement, including Monroe County deputies and the people wearing the red shirts in this room tonight, had done before him, Trooper Clark raised his right hand, took an oath, and made a promise. Sadly, he died fulfilling that promise. And I will simply tonight remind Ms. Donalfo and the members of this legislature that the actions that you have taken to terminate the health benefits for these retired deputies really do speak louder than do your words. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm getting better at this. I'm sorry. Once I get up here, I'm really very severely nervous. And I want to tell you something, okay? And I want to say that because of what this man just finished saying, okay? The first time I came here to this place, I was extremely honored. I was in the United States Navy. I was in the National Honor Guard, Station Andrews Air Force Base. I was very proud, extremely proud. And this place, as I come in here, the first time I came in here, I thought, bam, that's all I need to do, just walk in here, and I'm going to get the help that I need. Well, you know, we dream. But I guess you have to be an illegal immigrant to get that kind of help. Because the more I research, the more I find, and the madder I get. Flint, Michigan, they're still suffering with that, the water problem. The black community, they're still killing each other. No jobs, the lowest unemployment rate. I fought very hard for the students here in Rochester, New York, to get books pending their grants and student loans back in 2005, 2006. I had to go to Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. referred me to Albany, from Albany here. And it took me 10 months to finally get Dr. Salvador to see me. And I got Mr. Joe Brown to help me, and the Clergy Review Board to help me. And where was the outcry for that from the Democratic Party? I fought really hard for that. I fought really hard for tenants that were dying at 125 St. Paul Street because they parked the cars underneath there, and the fumes were coming up. People were waking up. They weren't waking up. I fought for all of that. And when I see cuts for military men, cuts, I remember when the men from Vietnam were coming in with no hands, no legs, no nothing. And we cut them right in the middle. We're at war. We are at war. And then when I saw, I saw a video where I see illegal immigrants saying, count us, Mr. Obama. We gave you a second opportunity to be President of the United States. We're not 10, we're not 100, we're millions. We worked the streets for you. So now you give us what we want. And I see the United States of America. This is the United States of America. And we're not fighting. We're fighting each other.
Please
Two
summarize.
parties.
Please
I'm
summarize.
sorry. Thank you very much.
This concludes the public forum.
At this time, we will recess the July 10th, 2018 meeting of the Monroe County Legislature and convene the Pure Waters Administrative Board for the Gates-Chile-Ogden Sewer District, Arundecoit Bay South Central Pure Waters District, Northwest Quadrant Pure Waters District, and the Rochester Pure Waters District. If there are no objections regarding referrals 18-0185 and 18-0187, we will adopt all four districts with one vote. The clerk will see to it that each individual motion and resolution numbers are assigned to each district. The clerk will please note the attendance and read the first item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
PWEB agenda item numbers 1, 3, 5, and 7, referral 18-0185.
Moved by Legislator Brew, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries. Next item.
PWEB agenda item numbers 2, 4, 6, and 8, referral 18-0187.
Moved by Legislator Brew, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
PWEB agenda item number 9, referral 18-0189.
Moved by Legislator Brew, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries. We will now recess the Gates, Chile-Ogden Sewer District, Arundecoit Bay South Central Pure Waters District, Northwest Quadrant Pure Waters District, and Rochester Pure Waters District, and adjourn the Pure Waters Administrative Board. The July 10th, 2018 meeting of the Legislature is reconvened. We will now proceed with the consideration of motions, resolutions, and notices. Will the clerk read the next item on the agenda?
Item number 1, referral 18-0153.
Moved by Legislator DeFlorio, seconded by Legislators Brew, Michiki, Howland, Zale, and Delahanty, and Legislator Lightfoot. This is a motion to lift from the table. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 2, referral 18-0153.
Moved by Legislator DeFlorio, seconded by Legislators Brew, Michiki, Howland, Zale, and Delahanty. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Legislator Lightfoot.
Thank you for your acknowledgement, Mr. President.
Through you, Mr. President, to the administration regarding some questions I have on the CIP, more specifically the Transportation Department. So as the CIP states, Mr. President, in accordance with Section 131K of the State Highway Law, the county has undertaken a program to fund reconstruction of certain city streets that function as arterials. In projects of this type, county funds may be used only for engineering design, construction inspection, and for actual cost of construction of highway elements. Utility displacement, sidewalks, and right-of-way costs must be borne by the city. So through you, Mr. President, to the administration, in the 2018 CIP, I'm just doing this as a reference, $1 million was collected for the certain work on Elmwood and Bellevue, and now and $200,000 was allocated in 2019. In the 2019 CIP, $1.2 million is allocated in 2019 for the duration. So was there any work done, or was the work tabled in 2000? Was any work tabled, because I don't see it listed in 2019 CIP? To you, Mr. President, to the administration. It's on page 57, if that helps.
Is that on page 57, if that helps?
Through you, Mr. President. Repeat the question. It's a question is, was the project tabled? Was that, did I get that clear?
Yeah, my question is pretty much in 2019, it tells us that 1.2 is being allotted.
Through the President, Mr. President, the funds to the city are upon request from the city, and the city programs those, and we provide typically a 1.2 million or 1 million per year, and that is as their projects are. So we're not funding them until they're ready to go, and they provide us with the documentations, and we sign off on that. So we did not table anything. We are waiting for the project to progress as the city plans.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. My second question to you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, to the administration, is regarding somewhat in a similar manner. This is regarding Union and Goodman. In 2019, we are allocating $800,000. Just one moment. So in 2019, there are no dollars allocated, with a total of $3.8 million at the total at the out end of the CIP in 2022. So there's no monies allocated until the end of this particular scheme. But I saw that in 2018 there was $1 million slated for 2019. So can you help me with that? That'll be on page 60. It's not page 60 though.
Through Mr. President, rather than funding it year by year, we are accumulating the funds to an aggregate total, and the city has requested that we give them, rather than the $1.2 million annually, the $3.8 over 3 years in the year that they're going to need it.
So are you telling me, through Mr. President, to the chairman, to the administration, that the city has requested that this money be just collected until they're ready to start the project, which will probably be in the year 2022, for a total amount of $3.8 million that we will be allocating?
Through the President, yes, that is correct. It is being all in 1 year rather than every year.
but that 1 year is not next year, and it could this could change. This is a working document because every year we change. Every year we approve the CIP. Is that correct?
Through Mr. President, that is correct. Yes, every year we approve the document.
Okay, thank you. Do you, Mr. President, to the administration, does the increase in cost in the milling and resurfacing project and the culvert projects represent an increase in projects or costs for projects? This would be on page 59 and 60. It looks like it was $12,600,000 for 2019, and it was just a mere $12 million for 2000 or last year that we approved. So that's why I'm asking, what's the difference of the $600,000? Are we doing more projects, or does it cost us more money to do the projects that we already have slated? And if so, are we doing less projects?
Through the President, the project selection is made on an annual basis. So the money for 2018, we select those projects. The funding in outer years is for both, maybe more projects, but more likely increase in costs. And the project selections will be made in the year that the money is made available to fit within that budget.
All right, so this number that we're having for you asking us to approve of $12,600,000 is just an estimate of what we think that we may be doing, but we don't really actually know what the projects are and or have the funding scheme for it.
Through the President, that's correct.
So through you, Mr. President, to the administration, why do we have a debt service payment? Tell me how that comes into play of debt service payment of $687,000 and thereof over this 15-year bond life. Are these two related or not? Through you, Mr. President.
Through the Mr. Chair, the borrowing that you see, that debt service payment, reflects the cost of the 6 years to be borrowed for all of the funding for that particular program. The program has identified candidates in an inventory of roads that are eligible for that treatment, and we have a culvert program and a milling resurfacing program. But all the projects are not equal, and when the time comes when the individual capital fund is available, we make those selections based on the most current data, and then the borrowing reflects that amount.
So are we not? So we're not, through you, Mr. President. We're not going to the administration. So we're not borrowing it actually right now. This may change, or are we asking to borrow all this right now in the CIP, or do we borrow later in increments as projects come?
Mr. President, the county does not seek to borrow funds in advance of a project. We wait until the project is near completed and any applicable aid has come in so that we know the appropriate amount to borrow for the long term.
Okay, so this is just giving us a cushion for hopefully. Thank you so much. To you, Mr. President, I have an additional question. Thank you for your smile while I ask you to stand there. What's my next question? Do you know what question I'm on?
4 or 5.
Oh, great. Let's go with 5. Explain to me, through you, Mr. President, to administration, what is happening with the Genesee Street Road improvements. Work is scheduled for $2 million in 2024. However, in 2018, it was scheduled for 2023. for $1 million. So, can you explain to me why there's a difference, what's going on with that, please? To you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, to the administration.
Through you, Mr. President, that is the same situation that you previously referred to on the Broadway Union Goodman, where rather than an annual set fee or set budget, they've accumulated that into the second year when they're actually going to need the money rather than every year being the same number.
Okay. And finally, Mr. President, this will be my last question to the administration. Under the City of Rochester traffic features, which is another section of the transportation part of the CIP, money was granted in 2018 and 19 of $400,000, and now they've been lowered by $100,000 for each. So I'd like to you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, to the administration, some kind of explanation of why the funding decreases.
Through you, Mr. President, that is a reimbursement to the city for traffic engineering costs on their projects. There again on the 131K streets. So depending on the roads that the city progresses, there's varying levels of traffic features that are affected and ultimately reimbursed. So, excuse me, we've had a balance in the last couple of years that they have not requested as much as we've had, so we're carrying forward those balances and hence reduced a couple of these years to not necessarily over-program ourselves and have more than we need.
Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Legislator Mafucci.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration, are there any other capital improvements planned that aren't in this book?
Through you, Mr. President, I believe the answer is no, unless the legislator has a specific example of a type of project that he believed would have existed that did not exist in a previous CIP, perhaps?
Through you to the administration, the question really relates to the planning of projects. So if the county's planning projects, they would all be in this book as of now. Obviously, if there are emergencies, that's a whole different situation. But anything that's planned by the county will be in this book. Correct?
Through you, Mr. President, that is correct.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, and I'll kind of go slow here. I'm going to go to the Department of Public Safety. And these would be projects planned for next year. The 911 phone system. I noticed that it's planned for 2024, but yet there's a debt service payment, bond life of 5 years. Is that going into next year's budget, or is that going to happen in 2024?
Mr. President, for presentation purposes, the CIP aggregates 6 years' worth of project cost and amortizes that cost over a particular bond life as indicated. So that debt service for that particular project, Mr. President, if the project is going to occur in 2024, The debt service is reflective of the project starting in 2024. There will not be a 2019 payment.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, I want to, and I'm going to stick to public safety just because I don't want to jump around, because a lot of these situations happened in other parts of the CIP. For public safety communications equipment and device replacement, a debt payment that was noted last year is now being replaced with operational costs. Why does that happen?
Mr. President, that is, although not having the CIP in front of me, that is reflective of that project being funded with cash capital contributions from the annual operating budget as opposed to bond financing.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, and these are just things that I kind of noticed, and I just want to get a feel for what's happening. For the public safety communications infrastructure, there was a debt service change to $58,437, and the operating cost disappeared. So why would that happen? And based on your last answer, it's likely that you're going to borrow instead of use cash.
Mr. President, believe it or not, that is likely the result of an error in this proposed booklet. The associate planner and I had a conversation about this and a couple of others. For that particular project, public safety communication infrastructure, the booklet indicates a bond life of 5 years. It really should be 0. This will be a cash capital funded project. The booklet prepares these dollar amounts based on a database. So, you know what they say about computer programs, Mr. President, garbage in, garbage out. So when this book is reprinted as adopted, the bond life will be 0, and you will see operating costs instead of debt service payment.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, moving down to forensic instrumentation upgrade. Why did the implementation years change, and why did the debt service increase when the cost of the project decreased?
Through the President, Bob Burns from the Department of Public Safety. I can answer why the years changed and the costs changed. It has a great deal to do with caseload, workload, the opioid epidemic, the amount of tested material coming through our crime lab has really taxed the instrumentation that makes that lab work. So there was some expedited need to replace some of the instruments and to hold off on a few of the others. And if you could stand by for just a minute on your follow-up question on the debt service.
Thank you.
Mr. President, the debt service calculation produced from the database, which generates these charts, likely takes into account that we're borrowing funds sooner in the revised 2019 CIP as opposed to last year's CIP, which suggested the borrowing would not occur until 2021.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions, and then that would be it for me. Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, for the 911 workstation replacement, why did the debt service payment increase with no change in cost?
Mr. President, I don't have the page in front of me, but it appears in the I believe the prior CIP compared to the proposed 2019 CIP changes the assumption in bond coupon 6% versus 5%. I'll have to verify that.
Thank you. Last question. Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, the public safety systems hardware, software upgrades, why did the debt service cost increase to $99,781 when the cost of the project decreased significantly?
Mr. President, like the prior question or the prior questions, plural, that's a very detailed question. In all honesty, Mr. President, I'm going to have to look at our CIP database and determine if there was a change in formula. I do know from prior work on these CIPs, there is an issue in prior years where when a bond life is 5 years, having a 6-year CIP throws off that calculation, and we've been working this past year with our new debt database to resolve that issue. But that is certainly something I can investigate and respond to in writing.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any further discussion? Legislator Moyo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question regarding the Monroe County Water Authority. So through you, Mr. President, to the administration. In checking between the 2 years, last year's and this year's, it appears that in the 2018 through 2023 CIP booklet did not contain any information regarding the Monroe County Water Authority, and this year's does, and it outlines significant outlays. So my question is why it was missing in 2018.
Through you, Mr. President, the Water Authority needs to be in the county CIP if they borrow. Last year, they knew they did not need to borrow. They weren't going to have to bond, so they didn't need to be in our CIP. We have since figured out in talking with them that it's uncertain year to year. They're not certain in a timely manner whether they'll need to borrow or work on cash reserves. So that is why this year you see them back in the CIP, and they're kind of an amendment or a attachment to it, kind of offset from the rest of the county because it doesn't impact our borrowing at all.
And by it, through you, Mr. President, through our borrowing, do you mean the county?
Correct.
So,
through you, Mr. President, I mean Monroe County's planning. It's a borrowing. It's a separate agency.
So they're borrowing, through you, Mr. President, they're borrowing $14 million and some change under their own auspices?
Through you, Mr. President, that is correct.
And yet the legislature has to approve that through you, Mr. President?
Through you, Mr. President, that is the case. I can show you the piece of law and legislation that we have to support that.
Okay, thank you. And forgive me, through the President, to the individual who's speaking to me, what office do you represent in the county?
Through you, Mr. President, I'm sorry, I'm Rochelle Bell from Monroe County Planning.
Okay, thank you very much.
Legislator Keeley?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of questions. With regards to the airport, in the 2018-2000 to 23, the viaduct was in there, and it was in there at a $500,000 budget within that 6-year. And in the next one, it is increased threefold to $1.5 million. Could I get an explanation? Is it just a increase in the project itself, in the scope, or? Well, I'm open to the zoo. It's such a big program. Oh. So she's asking something about viaduct. This is the current. Try 37 through the President.
She wants to know why it increased by 5. Through the President, we're just checking on some notes. Will be 1 second. Through the President, the increase in the project for the viaduct relates directly to the overall renovation project, and that the viaduct will now be handling part of the load of the canopy, and so there was extra money put into improving the viaduct to make sure it could hold the canopy and all the other improvements that go along with it. If through the President, if you'd like more detail, we can get you that too.
That's okay, thank you.
Sorry for the delay, through the President.
And just a couple more with regards to parks. Just a brief statement through the President, you know, as I stand here. It's a healthy document, publication to go through and to produce. So I appreciate the production. The charts are standardized. From my point of view, when we get to the description of what's happening within a department, it's kind of nice to have things bulleted and not in paragraph form. It makes it easier to match them up. That's just a comment from me. So with regards to parks and the completion of projects in 2018, the verbiage in one year is not quite the same as the verbiage in the next. So I would ask specifically if the projects planned for 2018 or 17, were they completed? And I'm looking through the president at Ontario Beach Park, where they talked about improvements at the Roebuck Center, which the year prior they actually mentioned roofs being replaced or repaired. Was that done?
Through you, Mr. President, yes.
Thank you. And on, through you, Mr. President, to the administration, on the Seneca Park master plan, I'm just asking for verification. Nothing within that master plan actually is affected by the zoo footprint?
Through you, Mr. President, that is correct. It is all outside of the zoo footprint.
Thank you. And then through you, Mr. President, to the administration, could you just give me a brief explanation as what was meant by restoring historic landscaping?
Through you, Mr. President, we have retained the firm of SWBR, and they are in the process of putting together the master plan update and work plan, and that will be addressed in there. A lot of it will be trees and other plantings.
Thank you. And then through you, Mr. President, to the administration on Northampton, I can't even say it, Northampton Park. To me, it looks like a hefty amount of work being done in 2021 and 22. And could I have a bit of explanation? More specifically, is the park currently ADA compliant for everything that's there?
Through you, Mr. President, yes.
Thank you. And given that through the president, this park has been used for other activities, are any of these improvements that are being done with the master plan, and in addition to the work that's been done prior to when the county fair was held out there, or are they dismantling anything that was done prior to the county fair, or are they in addition to what was done to those plans in prior years?
Through you, Mr. President, all of the work done to accommodate the county fair, which was paid for through monies received from the county fair, were all infrastructure improvements. So they're still there and available for general use. They really had no impact on the park that could not be accommodated for other use.
Thank you. And then through the president to the administration, just this is more aimed at the documentation in the book regarding bond life, debt service payment throughout the parks and the zoo, where you have a negative operating cost, and obviously that affects the debt service payment. This may have been explained to me before, but from a financial standpoint, why am I looking at a negative operating cost in the zoo and then the operating budget, the impact being lowered as well, or the debt service? Page 55.
Through you, Mr. President, I would assume that that is because the zoo charges admission and it'd be offset by admission.
All right, thank you. Then through the president, does that also affect the other Seneca Park, not Black Creek, Highland, Seneca Park, Northampton, also utilities, access, and site improvements, where you have your debt services in the first block, and then you have a negative number in the operating costs. And I guess I don't understand how that happens between parks, which certainly would charge usage fees, but in utilities, access, and site improvements, I don't know where that negative number comes from.
Through you, Mr. President, I would assume that that's because after making those improvements, we are more efficient and our operating costs go down.
Thank you, Mr. President. Why, that sort of sounds right to me. I'll say sort of with assume. Doesn't quite answer the question. I guess I'm asking why, and assume and sort of are pretty nebulous. It's not going to stop me from voting this through, but I guess at some point through the administration, through the president, I would like a more a better understanding of how this particular accounting works, and perhaps that would come from Mr. Franklin, Mr. President. I don't know.
Through you, Mr. President, that'd be great. We could accommodate that.
Thank you. And almost lastly, I think it is, back to the beginning of the CIP, and this is just on order of projects. Capital Improvement Program Summary. That's not it, sorry. Capital Budget Projects Priority, pages 4, 5, and 6. Through the President, if I can just belabor this. My assumption is that this was the questionnaire that ranked these projects as to what was most important.
Through you, Mr. President, yes, the planning board, the county planning board has the responsibility of ranking the capital budget year projects.
Thank you. And then through the President, do any of these projects ever get taken out of order and completed or commenced?
Through you, Mr. President, some things change because, for example, with the airport, FAA funding might come in different than we expect. But so generally, it's a question of revenue flow.
Thank you. And then I would just add in my final remark through the President to everyone, I would hope that next year perhaps the library system is a little bit higher on the list, since it serves a great number of people in the county and it's an educational resource. But that's it. Thank you.
Legislator Lightfoot.
Thank you for recognizing me once again, Mr. President. Just in light of what my colleague was bringing up about the operating costs being in the negative, and whereas the answers she may have received regarding gate fees at different parks could possibly be applicable, but I have the same question as my other colleague in the back brought up some questions as well, and so I would like a more direct answer, and more specifically in our CIP back on the traffic, which is what I was responsible for. Many of the objects tell us that operating costs are in the negative, and I had some assumptions of why that may be, but through you, Mr. President, to the administration, can I specifically tell me maybe on page 61 for the Lake Road to Bay Road to Pellet Road, you know, there's an operating deficit of negative $4,000, same for above for Lake Road 1 of $5,400, page 62, Salt Road, $3,000. So can you, Mr. President, to the administration, could you kindly, and I know that Mr. Budget, Bob usually has a good explanation for what's happening.
Through you, Mr. President, Tim Freeler, Transportation. Those costs that you see are calculated on a lane mile basis of the roads that are being done. So when the project is actually completed, we are patching and other maintenance activities for those particular roads will go down, obviously, because they'll all be brought up to current standards. So our annual maintenance on those will be less. So we calculate it on a linear basis for how much road is being done. That's why you see the different values, because the projects are of different lengths.
Oh, so you basing it on annual, and here I thought it would be an intergovernmental agreement that they was giving us some cash back in those areas. Okay, so those are estimated costs that would have been repair costs that would not have been done if the road had not been replaced. That's how you're computing that per linear foot? Through you, Mr. President?
Through you, Mr. President, that's correct, on a per lane mile basis or a linear foot basis.
Thank you.
Legislator Baroth.
I appreciate your attention and time to this. And thank you, my colleagues across the aisle, on this side of the aisle, for paying attention throughout this. It's very much appreciated. I had a couple questions about the CIP's section on the division of pure water specifically. And before I get going, I wanted to ask, for the bond debt, the debt service that is paid back on these projects, are they not paid for by the fees that the pure water districts get from their consumers through the President?
They are, Mr. President, in the first instance.
Thank you. And through the President to the administration, but then if a debt service is carried on one district, the constituents are responsible for all. There's no cross-paying or there's no forwarding of expenses along to the other districts. Is that correct, through the Chair? President?
Mr. President, that often happens if one particular district is the, I'll say, lead district for a capital project, but the one or more of the other three remaining districts utilize that project. The capital cost of the lead district has to be distributed to the other user districts based on conveyance, flow rates, et cetera.
Thank you. So through the President, there's a formula for that then?
There are, Mr. President.
Thank you. I asked because I was checking and determining where these debt services were going to be applied in the future years going out under the current CIP versus the past CIP. And to just give an idea, under the 2018 CIP, you could expect that, roughly speaking, 55% of the debt would have been borne by the Rochester Pure Water District, and about 45% would have been borne by the rest, approximately. Whereas under the 2019 CIP proposal, it's actually much more along the lines of 80% will be borne by the Rochester Pure Water District, and approximately 20% will be borne by the rest over the course of 6 years. And I can show you why I figured this out. And that's significant to me because I noticed that 3 projects from 2018 that were scheduled for 2020, the NYQPWD aeration systems improvements, the 2021 Rochester District CSOAP tunnel system improvement, and the FEV WWTP security improvements have all been taken away. So 3 projects are gone. And my question for you through the President is, are these projects going to come back, or are they just simply deemed no longer necessary, or they're subsumed into another project?
Through you, Mr. President, those projects are still very much needed, but based on reprioritization and the inclusion of these current projects you see in this proposed book, specific to the Rochester Pure Waters District, we've deferred those projects to future years to be determined in an effort to try to maintain some overarching fiscal accountability across all 4 districts.
Thank you. And so through the President to the administration, then it's reasonable to expect that at some point, probably past 2024, these 3 projects will reappear.
Through the chair, yes, that is reasonable, probably with an emphasis on the aeration system at Northwest Quadrant.
I had a feeling about that. Actually, I was going to ask that question. Thank you. And through the President to the administration, along a similar lines, 3 other projects were zeroed out for the 2019 budget. And I can identify them if you wish, but the general collection system and the general pump station for the Northwest and for Arundecoit as well were all zeroed out for 2019. Is that for the same reason through the President?
Through the President, not exactly the same. We have prior authorizations in each of those 3 districts, each one of those projects being more general in nature and scope, which affords us flexibility to address a number of different projects within each district under the single fund authorization. Based on prior authorizations, we have existing authorization balance, if you will, in the existing capital funds for each respective district. And so we actually, and again, out of some collaboration with finance and an effort for fiscal restraint, we zeroed out the ask for 2018. We simply did not put in the customary increase and improvement in facilities for those 3 districts for the monies that were planned in 18. And we also zeroed out the ask in 19 on the premise that we hope to live within our current authorization before requesting additional funding in 2020.
So through the President, if I understand this correctly, those 3 projects will continue, but the funding is already in place. Is that correct, President?
Through the chair, that's correct. We have adequate funding at this present time.
Okay. The other thing I'd like a little clarification on is the new project, which is the Electrical System Improvements Project, which has, over the course of, for 3 years, approximately $16.5 million devoted to it. Could you describe that for a little bit, please, through the President?
Through the chair, certainly. This honorable body previously authorized approximately $2.5 million for electrical improvements to Van Laer. Back in and around 2011 and 12, we did complete some significant improvements, including a comprehensive evaluation at that time. We've since revisited the evaluation and expanded upon some of its recommendations based on the fact that we've seen an uptick, significant uptick in power fail and outage incidents at Van Laer. Some of that's attributable to the dual feeds we receive from RG&E, but a lot of that, frankly, is attributable to the fact that the substation transformers that serve Van Laer are circa 1970. So in revisiting the work that we did a few years back and reassessing based on the maintenance history as of late, we determined that there's significant work that needs to be done there. In effect, we need to replace the entire transformer substation system to the tune of the $16.5 million. So clearly that's a priority without which we simply can't operate and provide services at the plant. So we're asking, as part of this program, space those out on a prioritized basis to accommodate effectively 3 phases of work in order to address that need.
Okay, that makes sense. Through the President to the administration, I'll point out that when I first started this line of questioning, I was referring to the relative weight borne by the Rochester Pure Water District customers and the other customers, and the response was that costs can be passed along. And this is important, particularly now, because in the 2019 year, 100% of all the debt service will be towards Rochester Pure Waters, and in 2020, 90% of it will be. So we're talking about, nearly $30 million worth of debt service coming up. Is it fair to say that a proportionate amount of that debt service will be paid by all members, all customers of all the Pure Waters districts collectively, since these costs are associated with anything that goes through the Van Laer district?
Through the President, yes, it is fair to say, it is accurate to say. I would add that we have 2 treatment plants for the 4 districts,
yes,
one obviously being Northwest Quadrant, and the second more obviously being the Van Laer facility. And the Van Laer facility treats the entirety of the flow from the Irondequoit Bay South Central District. Most of it by virtue of direct connection from Irondequoit to Rochester, some of it circuitously through GCO, of which then it's transferred back to Rochester and ultimately Van Laer. So while those numbers are not insignificant, and we recognize the concern in the question, to Mr. Franklin's point previously, both of those districts contribute a significant amount of chargeback based on the fact that all of their flow is going to Van Laer. So they, in a sense, end up paying a significant share of the debt that originates in Rochester.
Thank you. Finally, and this is not related to the current CIP, but as a general practice or a general request, if at some point in time the administration could develop some sort of analysis of, how much pass-through pay actually goes from which district to which district. I'd very much appreciate seeing that at some point in time. I imagine you have it. I would just appreciate seeing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Legislator Marionetti.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to make a motion for an amendment based on that error that did come up through the line of questioning from my colleague. On page 81, the bond life going from 1 year as listed now to 0 years.
Seconded by Legislator Connolly. I'll give you a chance to read this over, and is there any discussion? Legislator Cayley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just because I'm going to ask it anyways, were there any other errors that were found that haven't been corrected this evening through the President?
Mr. President, we have not identified tonight other errors that need to be corrected in this document.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Amendment carries. Back to the original referral, item number 2. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries. Legislator Marionetti.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to move agenda items numbered 3 through 31 and move that they be considered through one vote of this body.
Second?
Second.
Seconded by Legislator Cayley. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries. Next item is item number 32.
Item number 32, referral 18-0206.
Moved by Legislator Taylor, seconded by Legislator Connolly. This is to adopt. Before we have discussion, I'd like to explain why this item is coming before us as a matter of urgency. In May, Mary Warboys Turner and Peter Buckley resigned from the Imagine Monroe for personal reasons, and I'd like to thank them both for their dedicated service to the board. Because of their resignations, it is important to fill these vacancies as soon as possible so that the Imagine Monroe Board can continue to operate effectively. Both of the individuals tonight being appointed this evening have expressed an interest in serving on Imagine Monroe and have unique qualifications that will be valuable to the board. Resumes for both Ms. Bolsner and Mr. Lusk are attached to the matter of urgency. I have spoken to each of them personally, and they're both willing and prepared to serve on Imagine Monroe. Is there any further discussion? Legislator Moyo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the Comida or Imagine Monroe representative who might be here tonight. Through you, Mr. President, is there an ethical code of conduct that is adopted by the board members regarding hearing cases that they might otherwise have an interest in their business?
Through the President, I'll field this question from my prior experience with working with planning and development. First of all the Comida board members go through a training, a state-approved training, and these two will be no exception. The new ones will be scheduled for that as soon as they're approved. Second of all, if my memory is correct, they have their own ethics policy, which is very close to what the county uses as well. But I believe they have their own, but I will ask for staff to produce that and send it.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to take a look at that if it exists, or find out if it does exist. So I'd appreciate that. Mr. Lusk is the managing partner at Nixon Peabody, which is a very large law firm, one of the largest located in the city of Rochester, and it has offices all around the world. And he's the managing partner of the Rochester office. So my question, I guess, would be, would we expect that he would recuse himself from any votes that would come up that had any sort of touch on any of his clients, either past or current clients? Does anyone have an answer to that question through you, Mr. President?
Through the President, he would be expected to recuse himself for anything where there would be an appearance, even an appearance of impropriety, where there would be some kind of benefit to his law firm. And he's already fully aware of that and has done his research as to what possible conflicts there are at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. And through the President, do they appear to be extensive? Or is there any indication of their breadth at this point?
Through the President, I can only speak for the phone call I received today about looking for airport conflicts, and there was a small conflict where that firm has represented us in some claims for the airport. But I don't know if there were more than that. But again, he will go through the county attorney to present any possible conflicts.
And through the President, I guess, if he did not recuse himself, would any of those issues be public, or would it all be private? Through the President, I think I already said that.
Through the President, I don't understand the question. Could it be asked again?
The discussions of whether or not to recuse himself would be solely between the county attorney and Mr. Lusk or any other board member. Is that correct?
Through the President, if I understand the question correctly, when someone has a question, if they clearly don't understand whether or not they should recuse themselves, they do go to the county attorney for an opinion on it. But the board member tells the President, or the chairman, that they are recusing themselves from the matter.
Thank you. And I guess now my question is becoming more clear to me. Is that opinion private, or is that opinion public through the President?
Through the President, the actual facts of what the conflict could be do not have to be disclosed. They could be, but it's enough that it is a conflict. If it were deemed not to be a conflict, then that would be explained. The chair would ask for that to be explained.
Okay, thank you.
Through the President, may I go back to a prior question? Someone just showed me that the Code of Ethics for Comida is on its website.
Okay, thank you. And through the President, on a more general scale, how many votes were recused in the year 2017 at the Comida board, if you know, through the President?
Through the President, I have no idea, but we could ask staff that question because they are recorded in the minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to know the answer to that as well. And just one final question through the President: would these two appointments make a full board at this point?
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Through the President, that's true.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries.
Item number 33, referral 18-0207.
Mr. President.
Moved by legislator Delahanty, seconded by legislator Hebert. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 34, referral 18-0208.
Moved by legislator Alcoffer, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is for introductory purposes only. Next item.
Item number 35, referral 18-0208.
Second.
Moved by legislator Alcoffer, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is a motion to table, not debatable. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item, please.
Item number 36, referral 18-0208.
Second.
Moved by legislator Alcoffer, seconded by legislator Delahanty. This is to set the public hearing. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item carries. There being no unfinished business, legislator Marionetti.
Thank you, Mr. President. We stand adjourned until 6 p.m. Tuesday, August 14th, 2018.